An introduction to Agentic Testing, Module 1, Lesson 1. An overview of the PRP system and building Playwright automation frameworks with Claude Code. The core architecture of the approach we're using to build these automation frameworks with Playwright boils down to three core components. Defining the PRD, which is the product requirements document. It's the what you're building, and we're building a Playwright automation framework. We then have the PRP, which is the product requirement prompts. These are the detailed requirement prompts to feed to Claude Code so that it can build a scalable production Playwright automation system. And later on in the course, we're going to introduce you to the PTP system, which is the product testing prompts, which is another component that allows you to link in and key in and start creating agentic self-healing test loops. From start to finish in this first module, we're going to introduce you to a four-step process for building the framework, where we define an idea, we use Claude Code to create our product requirements document, which is a detailed document specifying the what we want to build. And from that, we're then going to use Claude Code to develop our PRP, which is the product requirement prompts that will detail exactly how to build this framework using Claude Code. And then the final step will be the execution of this PRP document to create the actual code for our Playwright testing framework, which is keyed into the actual application that's under test. So what I want to do over the course of these four lessons in this first module is take you through the concept of using the PRP system to generate from an idea your PRD documents, your PRP, and then execute on that PRP to create your framework with Playwright. And it's a simple four-step process that you can actually execute within about 10 or 15 minutes. But over the course of this module, I want to explain in detail the components that go together to make this system work. So I'm going to talk you through the templates that we use to guide the agentic coding tool that we're using. I want to take you through the commands that we're using with Claude Code that actually generate these documents for us, and then talk through some more of the context that we provide in terms of the README and the Claude.md files that will feed into this process. And ultimately, I want to get you to the stage where you've created your PRD and PRP documents using Claude Code, and then you come into Claude Code and you can use the execute command that will then take that PRP document that you've created and will allow Claude Code to process the document and generate your Playwright framework in a matter of minutes. But before we drill into that whole process and take you through from start to finish, let's just have a quick look at where the PRP system has originated from. So the PRP system is a methodology, an approach, whatever you'd like to call it, that's been developed by a guy called Rasmus, and he's released this in a GitHub repository in PRP's Agentic Engineering repository, and I'll provide the link to that below. But it's essentially a library of assets and templates used for agentic engineering or developing products. It's got commands that Claude Code can process. It's got templates in there that you can use to guide your agentic engineering coding tool, and it has README and documentation stuff that details the whole process, not only for you, but also for Claude Code, so that it understands the whole process from start to finish. And what I've done for the purpose of this course and for our ability to build test automation frameworks at scale and at speed is use the basis of that PRP framework and create our own dedicated repository for the course that contains templates specifically designed for Playwright test automation frameworks and commands that are orientated towards generating Playwright TypeScript frameworks. So I'll provide the link to this repo below so that you can clone this and follow through on the steps that we walk you through over the duration of this course. What I want to emphasize though is that the process of executing this is really a simple four-step process, and it's very quick and very simple to grasp. But over the course of these lessons, I want you to grasp and understand the detail behind this and how we use Claude Code to create these templates, to create these commands and all of the context that we need to generate our framework from the PRP process. Because once you understand this, you'll have the ability to scale this to create any test tool or any automation framework for any application that you need to build. So this course is not just about following this step-by-step process to create a framework. It's about teaching you how to use the PRP system in your day-to-day testing workflow. So the first part to this then is that we want to define our idea. And this is just a high-level sketch of what we want to do. And if we look in our project and the repo that you will clone in a minute from the training course repository, you will see that we have in the root folder an idea document. And all that does is sketch out what we want to do, the application we want to test, the documentation and some of the context that we need in order to build this framework, and we specify what we want to actually build in terms of a Playwright project. So that idea we then use as an input to the next stage. And for the next stage, the output is the PRD document. So this is the detailed what we want to build document. And in order to get to that, we need the idea, we need a template that shows Claude Code what it is it's looking to write. We need to feed in some of the application to test code so that we generate a PRD document specifically for our application that we want to test. We're going to feed in and execute the planning command, which takes the idea, the template, the app to test, and also a README document that will then feed in to generate the PRD document. So all of the components to create the PRD is the idea, a template example, the code from our application we want to test, the README that describes the PRP process for the application, and then the planning Claude Code command, which will then generate the PRD document. So actually in our project, what this looks like is the idea document. We then have a PRD template. So in the PRP's folder under templates, you will see a PRP planning template. So this gives Claude Code an example of what we expect it to create. And I've created this for you, and it's orientated around a Playwright project. We then take the README document, and this is a README document that describes the whole PRP concept so that Claude Code has more context about what it's actually doing and what it's going to be creating at this stage. And then finally what we've got is the application under test code so that Claude Code knows what this Playwright project needs to test. And once we have all of those components, what we need to do is run the PRP planning create command. And this is the command that tells Claude Code to take our idea as an argument and then use things like the templates, the README, and all of the context it needs to then generate the PRP document. And with all those components in place, it's as simple as starting up Claude Code in the terminal and then running the command PRP planning create. And in executing that command with the input or the argument, which is the idea document that we're starting out with, Claude Code can then go off and create the actual PRD document that we need to start with. So once we've run that command, you will see Claude Code generate this detailed what we want to build document. And I'll go through this with you in detail in the next lesson, and I'll step you through each of these commands and documents so that you can do this on your own system. But for now, just want to reiterate that this second step of the overall process is about creating this PRD document, the how-to document, by executing the planning command with Claude Code. The next step then is to create the PRP document. So this document is the detailed how to build your framework document. And to get to this point where you create the PRP document, you need the main input, which is the PRD document. You want the README again, which describes the whole process end to end for your agentic coding tool. You can feed in the code or the source or the website for the application you want to test, and you feed in the last bit of context, which is an example PRP template. And once you have those 4 pieces of information, you then run the PRP create command, passing in the PRD document as an argument, and that will generate your detailed how to build a Playwright framework specifically for your application under test. So again, in our project that we'll be using in the next lesson, we will take these components. We will take the PRD document that was created in step 2. We will then feed in the details of the application under test. We will add a template for what we expect a PRP document to look like. So there's a template in here, the PRP Playwright template for TypeScript, which I'll provide for you. And then again, we feed in the README, which describes the overall PRP process to give Claude Code an idea of exactly what's going on. And then it's a question of running in Claude Code the PRP create command. So we do PRP Playwright TypeScript create, and what we feed into there is the PRD document that was created in the last step. So we copy that relative path, paste that in there, and this execution of this command will then go off and create you your PRP document, which is the very detailed step-by-step process for creating or how to create your Playwright project. So from all those inputs, what we get from there is this output, which is the PRP document. Okay. And that document in here is the example I've got here. You can see as you scroll through this that it's a very detailed document describing all of the components, the folder structure, the architecture, some of the code snippets, some of the gotchas that you want to avoid, TypeScript example code, and all of that is built from that execution of the PRP create command. Okay, the last step then, which is step 4, is what we want to do is we want to execute on the PRP document that we've created. So this is the actual part where Claude Code will write the code and create your framework project. So the inputs to the execute process include the PRP document we've just created. They include the claude.md file, which is a memory file, which we'll talk about in one of the lessons. The README goes in again, which describes the overall process for the PRP system, and then we run the execute command, and that will take as an argument this PRP document to actually generate the code. So the final step then in our Visual Studio Code editor is to take the PRP document, detailed how to build it. We'll take the README, we'll take the command then from the Claude Code. So this is the PRP Playwright TypeScript Execute, which takes in the PRP document as an argument, and this is orientated towards creating and building a Playwright framework based on that PRP document. So again, when it comes to executing this, we'll be in our Claude Code terminal and we can run the PRP Playwright TypeScript Execute command, and it's expecting the actual PRP document as an argument, so we can take that from our previous step and pass that in as the argument. And when we run this, Claude Code will go off and it will then build the whole Playwright framework for you with an initial set of tests that are written specifically for the application you want to test. So 4 steps: develop your idea, use Claude Code to create your PRD document, the what you want, use Claude Code to create the PRP document, the how to build it document, and then you use the execute command to create all of the code and the framework based on the PRP document. And in the next lesson, I'll show you how to set up your environment, and then the following lesson after that, I will step you through each of those stages so that you can build this yourself.